On the job, every minute counts. That's why Lowe's now has ProBlock Quick Dry Primer, expertly manufactured by Sherwin-Williams. Engineered for pros to dry fast and go on smooth for virtually flawless results that keep your job moving. It's available in oil and water-based, and getting it is easy. Order online by 2 p.m. and get free same-day delivery right to your job site. Lowe's, we help, you save. Orders placed after 2 p.m. will be delivered next day. Valid in select zip codes. Subject to driver availability. More terms apply.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Progressive loves to help people make smart choices. That's why they offer a tool called Auto Quote Explorer that allows you to compare your Progressive car insurance quote with rates from other companies. So you save time on the research and can enjoy savings when you choose the best rate for you. Give it a try after this episode at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
This is Kevin Harlan. Black Friday game days coming to Prime, and it's going to be huge. Black Friday football is back with Bears-Eagles at 3 p.m. Eastern, followed by an Emirates NBA Cup doubleheader, Bucks-Knicks at 7 p.m., and then Mavs-Lakers at 10 p.m. And the whole day starts with the Capital One Skins game as 4 elite PGA golfers hit the links with $4 million on the line. Don't miss a moment of Black Friday game day. The Capital One Skins game at 9 a.m., Bears-Eagles at 3, Bucks-Knicks at 7, Mavs-Lakers at 10, and it's all only on Prime.
Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And as we head into the holiday week, we take questions from our listeners as part of our November mailbag. And I put out the call for questions before the Grayson Rodriguez-Taylor Ward trade was done. We actually had some good questions about Grayson Rodriguez before the deal happened that unfortunately got left on the cutting room floor, but we still have a wide variety of good questions from our listeners covering the majors and the minors. And I'm just going to jump right in with this question from Callie. How does the Grayson trade shift your expectations for the offseason moving forward? And I'll start with Bob on this one.
Well, it basically goes from, okay, I think we're going to try to sign a hitter, maybe make a trade, but we're going to get a starting pitcher or two and a closer and call it a day. Now I'm like, who the hell knows what we're going to do? Could be a lot, could be a little, could be blowing up the core a little bit, not to an extreme extent, but just
see ya, Adley.
Yeah, Adley gone, Westberg gone, Holiday gone. Not all of them. I'm just saying potentially, like maybe now it's a possibility in the back of my mind, but basically just like I said at the end of last week's episode, or if you're listening live about 10 minutes ago, buckle up because who the hell knows what's going to happen. I'm excited though. I will say that now that the offseason is officially underway, I mean, I couldn't be more happy for the 2025 season to end and baseball to be over, but after a few weeks off and now the offseason started, I'm excited. I'm ready for 2026. Let's make our moves. So let's get into spring training, get this new coaching staff, get them comfortable with all the players, and let's make a go at it in 2026. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think same thing. Like I said in the last episode there, after this, it's a unique trade, one that we were not expecting. And hopefully it's not the last move, the last unexpected move. Hopefully it's not the last Orioles-esque move and we're talking about big money on pitching would be nice, but it makes me feel more optimistic that we're going into a win now offseason. And I still hate saying that because I hate getting my hopes up. It's still way too early. And who knows exactly why that Grayson Rodriguez-Taylor Ward trade was made. But I am going to continue to choose to be a little bit more optimistic here and say that it is a sign of some fun things to come. We'll use that term.
Us optimistic? Who would have thought?
I agree with both of you. I think the other thing I'd add on to that is maybe don't assume too much about the current construction of the roster and who's going to have what role, because I think we all thought that Grayson Rodriguez, if he was healthy, was going to have a role in the Orioles pitching staff somewhere. Maybe not necessarily in the rotation, but that he was going to be around. That's obviously not the case anymore. So, Samuel Basallo is not going anywhere. There's a core group of players that I'm confident aren't going anywhere. And I don't think we're heading for an offseason where they're going to blow up the roster. But don't assume that the roster as it looks right now, it's how it's going to look when we get into mid to late January.
Agreed. Well, let's go to the next question from Colin. He says, here's a debate question. Does this trade indicate that Elias knows he's on the hot seat and needs to rebound, so he needs to win now moves to avoid being canned, or that he's confident enough in his job to know that he can take on this risky of a trade and still be safe? Kind of got into this a little bit on the last episode, but where on this scale do you land, Nick?
I said at the end of the year that to me, once it became clear that the 2025 season was done and it was a dumpster fire, and maybe at different points there were a little bit of hope that, okay, maybe we can squeak through with some real changes. And then all hopes were killed instantly, usually every time. At that point, I just started cheering for like a nosedive, honestly, and just hope that season became an embarrassment to this front office. And the players, yes, to an extent, they need to be accountable. They need to step up and improve. But like this front office, that last off season, that it wasn't it. I don't think Elias is on the hot seat though. I think his role is pretty secure right now. But I hope maybe this past season was a shot at the ego. There's real embarrassment and there's real desire now to pick things up, spend real money. David Rubenstein has to make sure that he reminds everybody just how rich he is every time he talks. Spend it on your baseball team. And if you're this front office, like it's time to start taking risk, or it's not going to be jokes that this core might be breaking up. That entire core that you spent years building up, it's going to be gone and it's going to be wasted. So yeah, I do think there is some eagerness though to get the ball rolling on some serious moves, and not just we tried, guys, but like get the job done. Do what you got to do. Add the extra year, add the extra 10 mil, do what you got to do.
Yeah, that's kind of where I fall, Nick, is that I don't think he's on the hot seat. And I think that if he was on the hot seat, you might have a lot more questions about, well, why are you trying to trade a pitcher that has 4 years of team control left? Is it just to save your job? I mean, because how many times when AJ Preller makes a move like that for the Padres, does that question come up? So, you could look at it either way, but I do think that last year was a little bit of a jolt, and probably a necessary jolt for how this front office goes about acquiring major league talent. And this is a signal that the old ways of doing things aren't necessarily going to be the way they continue to do things going forward.
I mean, if Ike Irish and Wahiba Aloy are out of town, then maybe he feels the fire, but that's not happening this offseason. So
yeah, maybe he's on the hot seat of being on the hot seat, if that makes sense. Like one more bad year and he could be on that hot seat, and he doesn't want that to happen. I think it's more like, I'm pissed off and I am not messing around anymore, and enough tiptoeing around trying to keep, just making more bold moves. Like, yeah, I'm sure they tried last offseason, and I think this offseason they're basically like, do or do not. There's no more try to Yoda it up a little bit. And I'm thinking that's more what it is. Like I said, I think it was confident and just like, we know what we want to do. We're going to do it. Reaction be damned. A little bit of risk be damned. And I kind of like that, just because, I'm pissed off about last season too. So let's change that narrative.
Now, how would foul territory answer that question? Talk about a player acquisition question here from The Bird is the Word. And my answer to this has changed since the trade, but would you sign Pete Alonso? And if so, how high are you willing to go, Bob?
I would. I'm not like dying to. I'm not going 5 years, 100 and whatever, 50 million it would take to do it. I think I would be willing to do a 2 or 3 year deal, which I don't think that's realistic, and I don't think that's going to happen. I think I'd rather have Kyle Schwarber if you're going to go that route, but maybe a lot of teams would, even the Pirates, apparently. But yeah, after the Taylor Ward, Grayson Rodriguez trade. I don't know if it makes much sense. I don't want to give up on Kobe Mayo. I think that September is pretty real, and I think there's still a lot of upside in that bat. I don't want to lose that unless it's for like some big trade for a legitimate top of the rotation starting pitcher. So would I? Yes. Am I going to, though? Probably not.
I mean, I will sign any, legitimate middle of the order bat for the right price. And I'm not real concerned, especially now the Orioles have brought in Taylor Ward. I'm not real concerned about whether or not that player is a right-handed hitter or a left-handed hitter. It's like, just find a way to improve this lineup. Ideally, I think if I had to go get one of the big bats that's going to be under Kyle Tucker's price, I would still go for Cody Bellinger because of what he can give you defensively, the versatility built in. But there's still a strong argument for bringing in Alonso. With that said, we also know that long-term contracts for first basemen don't always turn out very well. So I would prefer to go the route of 4 years, upwards of $30 million per season average annual value. However, I don't think that that's realistic given the contract that the Mariners just gave Josh Naylor. So I think it's going to take at least 5 years to get it done. And if at that rate, if you're really desperate to bring in Pete Alonso and you're confident that he'll be Pete Alonso-esque in 3 out of those 5 years, 5 years, $125 million is about where I would go.
I think I agree there. I would have been more definitively yes before the trade. Now I'm like, if it happens, the Orioles are still in on Alonso, great. Like, I'm not going to say no. I think like the two things that I think about when looking at Alonso and this roster, like, is the bat going to hold up across a length of that contract length? I don't see any signs that the bat's slowing down. He had a fantastic year last year. And are you okay with him being like DH only? Because I think he is arguably, maybe not even arguably, the worst defensive first baseman in the league. Are you fine with him being a DH? And honestly, I think I would be. But now, if it happens, it happens. But I'm not like aggressively going after that. Like, I'm fine with Mayo, Basayo, Adley DHing, of course, mixing in some other guys as well. But I'm cool with that. And I agree. I want to believe in Mayo's final month as well. I pulled up this real quick. We were talking about before we came on the air that final month there. 301 average, 393 on base percentage, sub 29% strikeout rate, near 11% walk rate, and a 165 WRC plus over the final month of the year. That's obviously not sustainable across the full season, but I want to see what it can do across the full season. And the one thing that really stood out to me, Kobe Mayo versus breaking balls in August, 39% of the pitches thrown against Kobe Mayo were breaking balls. He had a batting average of 0 with 16 strikeouts and a 53% whiff rate. Over the final month of the year, nearly equal sample size, he hit 296 against breaking balls, 2 doubles, a home run, whiff rate down more than 10%. The expected batting average is only 231, but that's still 31 points higher than his highest average of any month against breaking balls. So, like, regardless of how you look at it, he notably improved that final month, and I want to see what that looks like across a longer sample size.
Yeah, that's what you want to see from your young players, is adjusting and developing and improving. So, yeah, got to love that.
Let's go to two kind of similar questions here that I'm going to group together. The first one is from JJ Ped. Which free agents with qualifying offers attached to them would you give up the draft pick to sign, and which wouldn't you? And if you sign one, are you more or less inclined to sign multiple? And then here's this question here from KTG TV. If you were the GM and given the okay to give whatever it took, amount of years and money to sign any free agent, who would it be? So I grouped these two together because I feel like if you're going to go for, if you're going to shoot for the moon and you're going to bring in a top tier free agent, it probably is a guy that has a qualifying offer attached to them. And we have 9 free agents this offseason with the qualifying offer attached. Nick, I'll start with you and go ahead and take those two questions in any order you see fit here.
Guys with qualifying offers I would sign. So Schwarber, obviously. Kyle Tucker, I still would. I don't see that happening now, though. Let another team pay top dollar. Ranger Suarez, 100%. Fromber, no doubt. Bo Bichette, no. Dylan Cease, I will drive him to Baltimore myself. Edwin Diaz, yes, but the Orioles aren't going to go there for that price tag. Forget the draft pick. It's just the price and the years. Michael King, yes. Zach Gallen, I wanted to trade for him last year. I want Zach Gallen, still want him now. But I'm going to say no to Zach Gallen because if I remember correctly, I think MLB shared the draft pick compensation, what it would be. And I believe everyone was after the draft pick compensation was going to be after the 4th round for everybody except Kyle Tucker and Zach Gallen. And Zach Gallen, I believe, had the highest if he signs for more than $50 million after the first round. Even if it's less than $15 million, I think it was after Comp B round. That gives me more hesitation, more pause with Zach Gallen. I would sign one of that group. I prefer not to do 2, but I'm draft college baseball freak, and I just think it's shaping up to be a very strong draft class, and I think it could really help restock the farm after some trades are hopefully made. So I'm more than fine with 1, 2. I'm not going to say no to 2 of Suarez, Cease, Fromber, and Michael King, but I don't know if the Orioles would. If I had free range to sign one guy, it's Dylan Cease. He averaged 176 innings per year for the last 5 years. He's averaged 221 strikeouts per season over that span. He has flaws, all players do, but he's as consistent of a pitcher as you can find. I think Kyle Bradish, Dylan Cease, both striking out 200-plus guys at the top of your rotation sounds pretty good. So I think at this point, I've kind of wavered on who I'd want the most, Fromber, Valdez, Suarez. At this point, I think I'm at a place where, in my opinion, Dylan Cease is the top arm, and I really, really want him.
Well, I don't have to answer because my answer is identical to that. I'm a yes on Tucker, Schwarber, Framber, Cease, Suarez, Diaz, but I agree. I don't think the Orioles would match what the Mets are willing to do. And King, and I'm a no on Bichette and Zach Gallen. And I agree. Dylan Cease is my number one target. I just think he's right-handed Blake Snell, essentially, with better injury history, knock on wood. But, he's a strikeout artist. I think Bradish, Rogers, Cease is as good of a top 3 as you could potentially ask for, as long as everything goes right. So I agree.
My answer to the players that I would not go after that have qualifying offers, I would not be willing to give the draft picks for, it's the same as the 2 of you guys, except I would put Edwin Diaz in that category because I think this closers market is strong enough that as good as Edwin Diaz is, and Edwin Diaz is a very good pitcher, and I think objectively he is the best free agent closer available, it's not as though the drop-off after him is so steep that you're going to be sacrificing a lot. And none of the other closers in that mix come with a qualifying offer attached to them. As far as who I would go after, then basically everybody else in that mix. And if I had to go for one, I would agree with you guys. I would go for Cease. I will say this about Kyle Tucker, though, which is that he's not a superstar, and I do think that someone is going to overpay in terms of years for him this offseason. There's no way I'm giving him an 8-year deal. But if you give him a 6-year contract where you pay him a high average annual value, I'm pretty confident in him holding up for at least 5 of those 6 years.
Yeah, I think that's a good call.
This episode brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can get a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help find you options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. Kevin Harlan here. This Black Friday, Prime is taking over with an incredible day of live sports. Black Friday football is at the center of it all, with the Chicago Bears taking on the Philadelphia Eagles at 3 Eastern. Immediately after that, it's an exciting Emirates NBA Cup doubleheader. The Bucks will take on the Knicks at 7 p.m. Then the Mavericks will be in LA against the Lakers at 10. It's the final night of knockout rounds as teams vie for a spot in the quarterfinals. And the whole day starts on the links with the Capital One Skins game. as 4 elite PGA golfers face off with $4 million on the line. Black Friday game day tees off with the Capital One Skins game at 9 a.m. Eastern. Then it's Black Friday football with the Bears and Eagles at 3. And it all culminates with the doubleheader of NBA basketball, the Emirates Cup action featuring the Bucks at Knicks at 7 and the Mavs at the Lakers at 10. And it's all only on Prime.
Next up, we have a question from Kevin. Which of the 5 tools is the most important, least important? How about we just rank the 5 tools? Let's start with Zach.
All right, so I'm going to go power first, hit tool second, glove third, arm fourth, speed fifth.
Yeah, I think maybe with more context to the question, like depending on position or whatever, I think you can switch those. But yeah, it's power number 1. You can improve the contact rate, I think, but I think it's a little bit hard, as we've seen with the Orioles prospects here in the farm. You can improve. The power, I think, is a little bit harder. And speed at the bottom. You got to get on base to make it count.
Yeah, completely agree with that order. Maybe at shortstop and center field, the glove could go above the hit tool potentially in a close call. But yeah, I think that's pretty much correct, especially in this day's game. And look, we've defended Enrique Bradfield, who has like not much power at all. I don't think every player has to be cookie cutter like slugging guy, but as a general rule, yeah, I would agree.
Always exceptions. Peter has a fun question. Who are the top pitching and hitting prospects, maybe one each if you want, brought in during 2025? So it could be an international free agent the Orioles signed last year, a draft pick, or a trade deadline acquisition. Who are you excited to see develop in 2026, Zach?
For my hitter, I think Vahia Eloy is going to be a lot of fun to watch this year. Now, part of that is Golden Spikes winner. He performed very well at Delmarva after the draft, but I think we're going to get a sense of just how good the glove is at shortstop next year. And yes, there are questions about the hit tool, but I don't know that there's going to be all of the hitters are going to benefit from the move from Aberdeen to Frederick. But I don't know there's going to be a hitter that benefits more than Vahia Eloy, because we saw flashes of that power at Delmarva next year. And I could see him being a guy that puts his 20 homers in his first full season by starting out at Frederick and then getting the opportunity to bump up to Chesapeake later in the year. So I'm really excited to see him. And then for my pitcher, I went with a deadline acquisition. Wellington Aracena, really, I thought pitched well after the trade last year. He looked really good at Aberdeen. And the stuff, I think that if he can just hone the command a little bit, there's high ceiling, mid-rotation starter upside there. That fastball is really good. And if he doesn't quite get the command down, I think you've got a really good reliever. So his first full season in the Orioles system, after they've had a chance to work with him over the offseason to maybe make some tweaks, could be a lot of fun to watch.
Good stuff. Yeah, this is pretty easy for me as far as just who I'm most excited and interested in following next year. It's 2 guys we didn't get to see play. They're both draft picks. It's Slater DeBrun on the hitting side. I just think if Nate George is able to do what he was able to do, I think Slater DeBrun is coming in at a higher starting point, and I think he could be very exciting on the position front. And it's JT Quinn on the pitching side. I'm really high on this kid, and his last name is my youngest daughter's first name, so I have a big rooting interest there. So yeah, that's who it is for me.
Still my pitcher. It's JT Quinn for me as well. Like, it's for all the whining about the Orioles not taking pitchers early, like they took 2 in the first 69 picks last year, Joseph Giroux and JT Quinn, and both are fascinating. With Quinn, like maybe we're talking about viewing him as like Chase Alsop at this point next year. I don't think so. I think there's a lot more there. Great year at Ole Miss when he started his career. Injuries, but it was like blister and oblique issues. It wasn't shoulder, it wasn't elbow, none of that. So it's a low mileage arm. He took off a little bit last year at Georgia because everybody does when pitchers transfer to Georgia. they're going to take a massive leap because they're a pitching factory down there. And you look at what he did in the Cape Cod League, 14 innings, 25 strikeouts, 2 walks. That's huge. So, yeah, it's JT Quinn for sure. The hitting side, I'm going to dig deep here because I made a bold prediction right after the trade deadline that this guy was going to move up our prospect list. I don't know if he is or not at this point, but I am excited at least to see his development next year. I like Cobb Hightower, acquired from San Diego. I just think he's intriguing. 3rd-round pick, high school kid out of North Carolina. Still just 20 years old, good contact, low swinging strike rate numbers, had some injuries last year when he was with San Diego. So I'm excited that if he's moved past the injuries, he's settled in, the 20-year-old kid getting traded cross country, but he's back home, closer to home, settle in next year. Let's see what he does in 2026. And because I go back to MLB Pipeline going into the 2025 season, MLB Pipeline said that Hightower, they see him as an advanced hitter with 20 home run potential at the big league level. So like high praise going into last year for the teenage prospect.
Go to this question now from Bobby Jones, and this was submitted before the Grayson Rodriguez trade, but it might be more relevant now. And that is, do we think the front office is going into the offseason with the intention of Tyler Wells being in the pen or the rotation? Bob, what are your thoughts?
Bullpen, I think. I'm sure he'll get stretched out, starter innings, at least in the beginning of spring training, because you never know. Because I think he's certainly a guy that could step in, especially early on in the season, make some starts. He's very efficient. We have some questions about his longevity, the course of a full season, but I don't think the first month or two have ever been much of a concern for him. So I think you stretch him out, but ultimately I think he's a long man / middle reliever. Maybe if he excels, he can get back into the higher leverage spots, but hopefully there's enough competition for that it's not even needed. So I'll say bullpen for sure.
Yeah, I think the intention is to have him in the bullpen. But yeah, he works this offseason as a starter. You prepare to be in the rotation in case something happens. It's easier to transition back to the bullpen role instead of trying to build him up during the season. You got to be prepared for a disaster because we talked about last year, the Orioles weren't. And I get to sit on MLB presentation each month and talk to people, and they did there's one on pitching injuries I got to sit in on, and they showing the data and the breaking down of pitching injury timing specifically. It was part of that presentation, and it's spring training, like first month of the year. That is when they are happening in bunches. The bar graph, it's way up here early on. So I'm going to be tightly clenched until like May when it comes to these injuries. And for that reason, like you got to go into 2026 anticipating that Wells is, or not anticipating he's going to be in the rotation, but Wells needs to be prepared to be in the rotation. But the intention, I think, is going to be to have him as a pretty reliable, solid relief arm.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. You prepare as if he, needs to be a rotation option because you never know if you're going to need him. But the intention probably is to push him to the bullpen.
All right. Seems like we're pretty consensus there. So Reginald Worthington III would like to know, could you make a recap of the Arizona Fall League by going player by player and saying whether their stock rose, fell, or stayed the same? Zach?
Nick pretty much wrote the book on this one over at Substack, but I kind of agree with what he concluded. Enrique Bradfield Jr., baseline stats weren't great, but I think there were some flashes there that were interesting and most importantly allowed him to make up for lost time with the injury. So I think his stock at least held steady. Ethan Anderson's probably went up a little bit because we saw the flashes of why the hit tool is so intriguing. He didn't catch that much, but again, like what I saw at the bat, Thomas Sosa held steady. I think the handful of relievers or arms out there, Carson Dorsey looked good. I thought Tanner Smith had an excellent AFL, and Nick wrote about that data, which I'm sure he'll get into in a minute. Brendan Downer, Sarah Diedrich looked good. But I think if anyone's stock went up and went up in a way that's going to be generating national buzz for the rest of the offseason going into next year, it's Luis De Leon. Coming off his best professional season to this point, The data in the AFL looked really good. The baseline stats, which we always tell you don't put a lot of stock into, and you still shouldn't, but his baseline stats, 22 strikeouts, 2.76 ERA, 179 opponent's average in 16 innings was really good. Max velo of 98.5 miles per hour with the fastball. There's still a long way for De Leon to go in his development, but he looked so good out there.
Yeah, the pitching as a whole just was really solid. I think the league, can't remember which game I was watching, and they were talking about the league average ERA in the AFL this year was over 6, and all the Orioles pitchers were in the 2s and the 3s. So yeah, again, it's about health first and foremost, and it's about guys are coming in there. They want to throw a new pitch, so they're going to try it out in the Arizona Fall League. Enrique Bradfield Jr. had his new stance, and he mentioned that was because it allowed him to see spin better and get the bat through the zone a little bit quicker. And so he's trying it out. We'll see if that sticks. But it's about trying new things and just logging innings for guys. All of these guys missed time during the season, except Dietrich. He was the minor league signing during the season. So all these guys accomplished their goals in terms of staying healthy. That was huge. And getting at bats and getting innings, except Sosa just didn't play. Like, he has one of the fewest at bats on the Peoria team, but he was young. He got to face competition at least. Like I said, I don't think we learned anything new from Sosa. Still a lot of swing and miss, extreme power. It's another year of let's hope he can put it all together, but he's going to start next year in Double-A again. I do think Ethan Anderson, the stock is up. I really liked what I saw from the bat in the AFL this year. And on the pitching side, yeah, De Leon, fantastic year. I thought Dorsey, we got to see data on Dorsey for the first time. He's a lefty who sat 94 with 17 inches of induced vertical break and 7 feet of extension. I like that. The changeup, 31% whiff rate. He had a really good AFL. The walks were an issue, but they have been for a while. And yeah, for me, like I'm excited to watch Tanner Smith next year. As far as he's purely relief prospect, I think, but man, he sat 95. I think he got up to like 98. I want to believe. Maybe he touched 99. I don't know. It's 98 or 99. He got up there. His velo though. The slider, a 73% whiff rate with a slider that he threw 24% of the time. Yeah, some good stuff from the pitching side. And honestly, not a ton of like major takeaways, but I don't think anybody's stock went down.
Yeah, I agree. I think we owned this AFL, honestly. Enrique Bradfield, hot button issue player, big lightning rod for conversation. I think his stock went up a little bit. I think he showed out on defense. He set career highs at exit velocity, max exit velocity as pro. And, the stat line isn't amazing just by any means, but saw him do some pretty good things and steal bases at will. So I'll say slightly up. Ethan Anderson, definitely arrow pointing upwards, just continued what he did the last month or two of the season after getting fully healthy and hitting. Thomas Sosa, yeah, he's 2 years younger than the average age at the AFL. Story of his career, story of his life. But yeah, he hits the ball hard, strikes out a lot. Let's see what happens. Luis De Leon, probably like maybe the highlight of the entire AFL. I don't know. I wasn't paying attention to the league as a whole, but certainly like got the most attention in a positive way from the Orioles. I think he continues to push for top 10 prospect in the system status. Carson Dorsey, Tanner Smith, Sayer Diedrich, Brandon Downer. They all did great. I mean, I think arrow up, and arrow up. Yeah, so buy all the stocks or sell high. Either way, stocks were good in Arizona.
Follow-up question to that before we go into the next question. This is my follow-up question. MLB website will load here. Luis De Leon, about him real quick. He logged, so he had 87 innings in 2024, 87 innings in 2025. I know he missed the start of the year. I was going to say, let's talk a trade deadline and the craziness that we just witnessed over the last 24 hours. Was Luis De Leon going out to the AFL to make up those innings to try to get to 100-plus innings in anticipation of 120, 130 in 2026? or a bit of a showcase in the AFL? Why he was sent?
A little of both, maybe. You do get him more innings, but at the same time, if you've got enough eyeballs on him and you can entice a team into giving you a high-impact major leaguer, whether that's for the rotation or for the lineup, with De Leon as a centerpiece of that package, or being a guy that allows you to not have to move as many players, that works out well for the Orioles too.
Yeah, I agree. I think mostly was just to push the innings past the point of 2024 to keep the trend going upwards, break that 100-inning barrier. But doesn't hurt that he's showing out. And if you need to use him, hopefully they don't, because I really am loving this guy, this kid, as a pitching prospect. I think, hey, doesn't hurt at all. If you want to make the big trade, sometimes you got to give up enticing prospect of your own. So,
all right. Next question from EJ. It says, how many of the On the Verge end of season top 50 get traded this offseason, Bob?
I can't be specific because that's insane. But I was going to say between 3 and 5, but that's a cop out. So I'm going to say 4.
I was going to put a line at 4.5.
I'll say slightly under. I'll take the under. Just because obviously I've been predicting that a major league piece could go in a buy now situation too. So I'll see there's like 2 trades where we're buying in some form or factor, and maybe there's 1 minor leaguer in one, 3 in another, and they're all in the top 50.
Yeah, 4 was where I landed too, and I'll admit I took kind of an arbitrary process to get there. It was okay. How many holes are they going to fill versus trade, and trade versus free agency? How many of those trades are going to be good enough that you have to give up a top 50 prospect to make them? And it felt like 4 players total was about the right number when I got to my answer. It could be that of those 4, 3 are in the top 25 or the top 30 because the Orioles made a big splash, or it could be that they get their top tier starter in free agency and it's more towards the back half of the list that you see these players go, or it could be a blend of the two. I don't really know, but 4 seemed like the right number.
I want to say 3. I would have been higher, but we got a good bet, and you didn't trade a prospect. You traded a major leaguer, but I'll say 3. 1 big trade that's going to involve 2 bigger prospects and then a smaller deal.
Kevin Harlan here. This Black Friday, Prime is taking over with an incredible day of live sports. Black Friday football is at the center of it all, with the Chicago Bears taking on the Philadelphia Eagles at 3 Eastern. Immediately after that, it's an exciting Emirates NBA Cup doubleheader. The Bucks will take on the Knicks at 7 p.m. Then the Mavericks will be in L.A. against the Lakers at 10. It's the final night of knockout rounds as teams vie for a spot in the quarterfinals. And the whole day starts on the links with the Capital One Skins game as 4 elite PGA golfers face off with $4 million on the line. Black Friday game day tees off with the Capital One Skins game at 9 a.m. Eastern. Then it's Black Friday football with the Bears and Eagles at 3. And it all culminates with a doubleheader of NBA basketball, the Emirates Cup action featuring the Bucks at Knicks at 7 and the Mavs at the Lakers at 10. And it's all only on Prime.
This episode brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can get a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help find you options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Kevin Harlan here. This Black Friday, Prime is taking over with an incredible day of live sports. Black Friday football is at the center of it all, with the Chicago Bears taking on the Philadelphia Eagles at 3 Eastern. Immediately after that, it's an exciting Emirates NBA Cup doubleheader. The Bucks will take on the Knicks at 7 p.m. Then the Mavericks will be in LA against the Lakers at 10. It's the final night of knockout rounds as teams vie for a spot in the quarterfinals. And the whole day starts on the links with the Capital One Skins game as 4 elite PGA golfers face off with $4 million on the line. Black Friday game day tees off with the Capital One Skins game at 9 a.m. Eastern. Then it's Black Friday football with the Bears and Eagles at 3. And it all culminates with a doubleheader of NBA basketball, the Emirates Cup action featuring the Bucks at Knicks at 7 and the Mavs at the Lakers at 10. And it's all only on Prime.
So let's go to this next question from Vivek, which kind of builds off of EJ's question. Who of these 3 pitching prospects is the most tradable? Trey Gibson, Levi Wells, or Nestor Herman? All 3 of these guys ended last year in Norfolk. Could be rotation options for the Orioles at some point in 2026, but all 3 are trade chips in their own way. So, Nick, what are your thoughts here?
Tradable as in who of the 3 are other teams going to want more? Trey Gibson, probably, because I think he jumped on everyone's radar last year. He's 6'5", 240. He's a workhorse. Fastball sits 94, 95. I think he's sitting 95, 96 next year. 7 feet of extension, 17 inches of induced vertical break. It's that fastball can be lively. And I know some projections have him in the major leagues as a 3.5 ERA guy with a 26% strikeout rate. That might be aggressive for sure, but that's potential. But if the question is, who are we most comfortable trading? I think Gibson gives you more, but I'm moving Herman, I think, is my answer. Just because he doesn't have the velo that Levi Wells and Trey Gibson does. And I think it's just the fastball. I like Levi Wells' fastball and Trey Gibson's fastball a lot more than Herman's.
I agree. It's Herman, which is not to say I don't really, really like him as a pitcher and think that his upside isn't that much lower than them. I think Gibson, again, has the most value, but he's also, that's for a reason. He's borderline, if not certifiably top 100 prospect in the game, legitimately got good innings in AAA and can help pretty much whenever they need him to. Levi Wells, I think, is probably, I don't think you're going to get as much for him as you should. I think he's probably one of the most underrated pitching prospects in the system at this point. We've talked about the Baseball America stuff numbers and just how off the charts he is with fastball, slider, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't want to give up on him for less value than I think he's worth, which if you do trade him, maybe it's after 2026 when everyone catches up to how good he can be. So yeah, I'll say Nestor.
Yeah, I go with Herman here too. Now, if I was looking at the risk-averse strategy, I probably would go with Levi Wells just because it feels like there's the possibility, the volatility with him might be a little bit higher. But at the same time, I also agree with what Bob said, that it might be that people are too eager to discount Wells and you're not going to get full value for him. And not to say Herman's value can't go up, but I kind of look at them in tiers where Gibson is the guy I'm only parting with if I'm getting back a Joe Ryan, where there is a solidified top of the rotation arm, multiple years of team control left. If I have to go for a pitcher that's 1 year of team control left and they're below that ace level, there is no way that I'm trading Trey Gibson for him. Nestor Herman, though, probably a lot more comfortable moving him. And then with Wells, like Bob said, I just don't know that everyone has caught up yet to how good Wells could be, especially because the swing and miss on his pitches really didn't come until the second half last year. So if he's able to go out next season and put up bigger strikeout numbers than he had last year, his value is only going to be higher.
Yeah, which kind of leads us into the next question from Half, good member on the Discord. Which players in the Orioles minor league system are going under the radar as potential contributors to the, I'm assuming, major league team in 2026? Nick?
My answer is Levi Wells. It's loud stuff. I'm not ready to move him out of the starter's role right now. I would like to see what he can do in Norfolk's rotation across a big chunk of 2026. But yeah, you look at the fastball and slider specifically, and trying to figure out how do I put this. I think he would fit the psycho late inning reliever mold pretty well. Is like attitude wise, as he pumps, he can hit 100 in those 1 inning stints with some FU stuff. I think he's done some things in the past on the mound that I've seen that lead me to believe that he could be a very fun late inning arm. So I think that could be a potential move. I was looking around too at some other guys in the upper levels, and if you want to take a super deep, like I'm digging deep here, but Carter Rustad stands out to me as well. 15th round pick out of Missouri last year, but when you look just in Double A alone last year, 19 innings. Last year was his first full year as a pro. Got to Double A, 19 innings, a 25% strikeout rate, 8% walk rate, 2.11 average against, 3.32 ERA, 2.87 FIP. I don't have the pitch data, so I can't speak more definitively, but he found success in that first year strictly as a reliever, and they moved him pretty quickly. He's an older arm. He was like a fifth or even might have been a sixth-year senior. He was at least a fifth-year senior when they drafted him. Right? Why not? Like if he comes out hot in 2026, ride that wave and see what happens. But that's a super deep cut there.
I've got a pitcher and a position player in my group. I'm going to start with my pitcher, and it's Tyson Neighbors. I thought that was of the trade deadline acquisitions last year, the guy that had arguably the highest ceiling of the pure relief prospects, and that's a bucket that would include Anthony Nunez and Cameron Foster. Neighbors did not get to AAA after the trade deadline, and I don't understand why, because he had excellent numbers in AA with the Padres system and carried that over to Chesapeake. Last year, 59 innings in the minor leagues between two organizations, 1.59 ERA, 2.94 FIP, 2.95 xFIP, with a 40% ground ball rate and really good strikeout numbers, 36.4% strikeout rate. This is a guy that is a pure relief prospect, but as Nick just talked about, a little bit of a psycho on the mound. I get that vibe from Neighbors too. And he's somebody that I think if you put him in Norfolk's bullpen, even though he's not Rule 5 eligible for a while, he could break his way into the big league bullpen before the season ends. And if you want to go a little bit deeper on the position player side, I would not be shocked if we see Silas Ardway in the major leagues next year, even if it's only for a brief cameo, because, hopefully it's not to the extent that we had it last year, but you always need an emergency catcher. Ardway, I think, is going to be in that weird spot in Norfolk where you want him back there as much as possible, but you're probably going to have Creed Willems too, and you need to give Willems as many at-bats as you can behind the plate. So Ardway could be sort of the new Maverick Hanley in that he becomes an up-and-down option. The defense, if it's not major league ready right now, it's extremely close. I don't know what the bat is going to do, but the bat is not his calling card anyways. So, if you're looking for someone that might have a week-long cameo in the majors next year, it's flying under the radar a little bit now. I'd keep my eye on Ardway.
Good picks. I think probably bullpen is where you're looking. And I agree with Levi Wells. I agree with Vivek in the chat. Zach Fruit in reliever mode could be really good. I think Alex Pham is a pretty decent sleeper. Tyson Neighbors, I think Carter Baumler, Yaki Rivera, Ramon Gomez, like all these relievers, I think anyone could pop. But my pick is going to be Aaron Estrada. I think the breakout will continue in a big way in 2026. I think he could be potentially the guy that gets that September cup of coffee the way that Beavers and Basayo did in 2025. And if we're in the thick of things, I think that's a nice bat to be able to have. You don't want him late in close games defensively, but I think you're going to potentially want that bat available in crunch time, September, and maybe into the playoffs. So give me Aaron Estrada making a name for himself at the end of 2026.
And a now former, he just took a new job outside the organization, but a recent coach within the Orioles minor league system did just reach out like 3 days ago and said, in response to Aaron Estrada, and said he's a very special kid. So I think we've heard multiple quotes from Estrada about who he is and his work ethic. So love it. Seth, we got just 2 more questions here. Seth wants to know, are there any prospects the Orioles should sell high on, Zach?
I briefly thought about Aaron Estrada for this, but then I decided against it because I do think the value could actually be a little bit higher next year, especially if he's able to settle into a position defensively. I would be really interested to see what the perception around the league is for Esteban Mejia, because there was a ton of buzz about Mejia nationally last summer, and he pitched very well. I got a chance to see Mejia pitch with Delmarva, and it is a very special pitch mix. It's a fastball that quite literally has a sound as it's coming into the plate at 100 miles an hour. He's got a very good slider that he doesn't command consistently, but it's a hard slider. Changeup, long way to go with that pitch, but you can see flashes of that improving and him being a very high ceiling major league starter. Where it's a problem, though, and this is something we talk about a lot, it's not a problem, but the reality is, given how young he is, he's only a teenager. Next year is going to be his first full season of pro ball. He's got a long way to go. And with the number of pitching prospects that the Orioles have pushing up the system right now, does it make sense to move Mejia, even with the ceiling as high as it is, knowing that you still got Trey Gibson, you still got Michael Ferret, you still got Levi Wells, Nestor Herman, on, and that with Mejia, there is a lot of unknowns because he is so far away from the major leagues.
I think that's a very fair pick there. I think Vivek saying Nate George, I get the argument. Wouldn't be my pick. Maybe Dylan Beavers with the way he kind of came on at the major league level. Maybe that could be part of a huge trade, but I'm going to go with a pitcher that I love, and we've recently talked about, just because pitchers, you never know, the injuries can come for you. We just showcased him in the AFL. Luis De Leon, I think, could be that guy. I'm hoping that's not the case, as I've said many times now, but if you're going to sell high, I don't think you could sell much higher right now than Luis De Leon.
Yeah, I was trying to think of I don't think Boston Bateman, I don't think that's selling high right now because I think you need to unlock a little bit more. I think I like the Mejia pick as well. I just feel like I try to find somebody else because I feel like I've just been throwing cold water on him since the breakout and you get all that national hype. But like Zach said, he's so young, he's so far away. And yeah, the stuff is super enticing, but said that about Grayson Rodriguez. Continue that trend. Yeah, it's the pitching prospect stuff. I feel like that I'd be much more willing to sell high on a pitcher, or maybe parlay a couple of the pitchers that they received at the trade deadline. No, definitely not Ike Irish, but I'm too big on Ike Irish. I want to see that bat. I don't want to see him catch a single inning, and I want to see that bat. I want to see that bat flourish first, but. Maybe you package a couple of arms that you received at the deadline, knowing that, yes, the capital you got back maybe wasn't as high as because you're trading off rentals, but can you now package a couple of those guys? You feel good with Gibson, Ferret, Herman, et cetera, Luis De Leon. Can you package a Bateman and Wellington Arcina and some other pieces and get a bigger piece to build off that trade deadline momentum? I don't know. But yeah, if I'd pick one, I think I'm going to agree with Esteban Mejia.
Let's go to our last question of the night, and this comes from Sterling. And this is kind of looking at the Orioles pitching situation after the Grayson Rodriguez trade. He said, I think regardless, one big starting pitching acquisition is going to happen this offseason. However, let's say we can't find an Ema/King type as our second starter. How would we feel if we just doubled down the bullpen and sign 2 closer types and roll into the season with Dean Kramer as the number 4 and Brandon Young/Cade Povich battling out for the number 5 spot? Nick, I'll start with you here.
It's enticing. I get the thought process. I want to buy in on Povich improving. I'm sure that may not be a popular opinion among a lot of fans, but I'm going to buy in on a little Povich. Not bounce back because it wasn't terrible, but a better version of Cade Povich next year. Brandon Young flashed, but can he do it across the full season? I just think it's a lot of question marks. And we just talked about how important having that depth is. you've got the pieces to do a trade, make the trade. Use that depth you've been building. Like I said, this year's draft class is going to be strong. You're going to have many picks. You should have a high bonus pool, even if you lose a pick or two, whatever. In with the qualifying offer, signing one of those free agents, you can replenish it. International free agency starts in 2 months. Like, you can replenish this farm. Use the capital you have to make a trade. If you're not going to go after two of those arms of free agency.
Yeah, it's a no for me, dog. You need two starters, and it's not. I like Povich. I like Brandon Young. Kramer is super solid back of the rotation starter. It's nothing against those guys, and maybe there's a world where I could go for this is if Kyle Schwarber is in Baltimore as well as Taylor Ward, and it's just like we're gonna mash. We're gonna close games out. We're gonna get Devin Williams and Ryan Helsley, what have you. Then maybe you could convince me, but just if it's between two closers or two starting pitchers, give me the two starting pitchers.
If 1 through 4 in the rotation stay healthy next year, I get this strategy because you shorten the game and you figure out, okay, between Brandon Young and Cade Povich, or maybe a combination of the two, you get that fifth starter figured out. For me, though, I get too many flashbacks to last season. And I kept using the phrase in spring training last year, they're buying time with the rotation. They're buying time for pitchers to come back and get healthy. They're hoping that between the bullpen and the lineup, they're going to perform as expected, and then they'll go out and get the starter at the deadline. I feel like that if you went with this approach, you would be back in that position. Yes, the ceiling of the rotation would be higher than it was last year in camp, especially after Grayson Rodriguez got hurt. But you would still have that question mark of like, all right, what if Trevor Rogers gets hurt, or Kyle Braddis gets hurt, or what if this is finally the season that Dean Kramer gets hurt?
Or just Trevor Rogers is a low to mid fours ERA guy all of a sudden again.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's just a lot. I think that they have to safeguard themselves against what can go wrong this season, because that's what they didn't do last year. And it wasn't the whole reason that the season unraveled, but it was a big part of it. And with that, that does it. We hope that you have a safe, healthy, and happy Thanksgiving. We will be back next week unless something really crazy happens over the course of this week, which who knows. But if it doesn't, you can find us next Wednesday if you're listening to this on our podcast feed. If you're watching us live on YouTube, that will be in 2 weeks. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, and YouTube. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon and sign up to become a member today. You can join at the $3, $5, or $10 levels and have access to bonus coverage from Bob, Nick, and myself, including our upcoming Top 50 Prospects Countdown. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.
If you're a custodial supervisor at a local high school, you know that cleanliness is key, and that the best place to get cleaning supplies is from Grainger. Grainger helps you stay fully stocked on the products you trust, from paper towels and disinfectants to floor scrubbers. Plus, you can rely on Grainger for easy reordering, so you never run out of what you need. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.